Credible reporting points to the UN warning Israel that it would suspend operations across Gaza unless Israel acted to better protect humanitarian workers and provide UN workers with the means to directly communicate with Israeli forces on the ground in Gaza.
We are in regular contact with the Israeli authorities to underscore the urgency of having the following things that we need. One is an effective coordination and deconfliction system for operations across Gaza, permissions for essential security equipment commensurate with the risks of working in a war zone, and for the Israeli army to commit to its responsibilities to facilitate humanitarian assistance and to protect humanitarian staff and installations.
The World Food Programme earlier this month paused its distribution of aid from the US-built pier off Gaza due to concerns for the safety of their staff, with widespread reports of convoys being looted due to lawlessness and sheer desperation.
Humanitarian operations have repeatedly been in the crosshairs in Gaza, and I think you know the number of humanitarian workers that have been killed. We've repeatedly talked about humanitarian convoys shot at, and notably last Friday. We've talked about areas that were deconflicted, that were hit, hospitals, shelters, and so on. And the risks, frankly, are becoming increasingly intolerable.
Mr. President.
But this was the Israeli representative in the Security Council Tuesday, blaming the UN for the lack of aid distribution in Gaza.
As for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, since the beginning of the war, more than 36,000 aid trucks have been brought into Gaza. This is over 682,000 tons of humanitarian aid, which has included food, water, shelter equipment, medical supplies, fuel, gas, and more. The problem was and remains in the collection and distribution of this aid by the United Nations. Nearly all United Nations requests for the coordination of humanitarian convoys have been and are being approved, and the daily pauses in operations against terrorists continue to enable the distribution of aid. Yet Hamas continues to attack aid convoys, serving their dual objectives of stealing food and supplies for terrorist combatants while disrupting the delivery of aid.
Those remarks put to the UN spokesperson.
We've seen these accusations over and over again. We keep trying to pick up the aid from the crossings, from the pier. There are risks that are unacceptable, and despite those risks, I mean, and you've heard firsthand from our humanitarian colleagues on the ground, they are so dedicated to their work. They are so dedicated to helping the civilians in Gaza to get aid. They're doing it in an active conflict zone. The way forward is not a mystery, right? It's on the table. It's a humanitarian ceasefire. It's the free and unhindered flow of humanitarian aid throughout the Gaza Strip. It's the immediate and unconditional release of all the hostages. The solution exists, but I think to blame those who are trying to help, who are there in Gaza without guns, right, without real security, to me is a bit far-fetched.
This, as the latest IPC assessment warns that 96% of Gaza's population continued to face crisis levels of hunger. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Index revealed that almost everyone in the enclave faced extreme levels of hunger, with 1 in 5 households going days without food and nearly 500,000 people finding themselves at levels deemed catastrophic. Even as this latest assessment found a slight improvement in the food security situation in Gaza's northern governorates, with a clear message that such improvements demonstrate the difference greater and sustained access could make.